Okay, so the purpose of this recording is to demonstrate the use of Feeds Manager. Before I do that, we're going to go back to the user company admin dashboard, and I'm going to tell you how I've set up this particular company and what I've done with the mills because this is a very good illustration of how you use mills to sort both people and feeds. So back here on the user company admin, we're going to look at mills for a second. Now, as explained in the account activation, when you set up a company, you are first creating mills to which you can assign farms and you can assign feeds. And sometimes those mills serve the same purpose, and sometimes those mills serve two different purposes. They can serve for the purpose of sorting people, and they can serve to sort feeds. In this case, we have a fairly large company with multiple mills distributed throughout the country. And then that country is broken down into four main regions. So the way that um, Dove Maloney has set up her company is that she started out with the main Dinty's feed mill. And that is because the name of the company is Dinty's, and she had a default mill set up when she created her company, but she's not choosing to use that. Then there is Glendalough Mill, which is the main feed company mill where most of her formulation feeds are made, where most of the feeds are all stockpiled. She then has these four region designated mills. And these are her people sorters. She has nutritionists in the Munster region, the Leinster region, the Connacht region, and the Ulster region. And within those regions, she also has mills that are physical mills that supply the feeds to the nutritionists operating in these regions. So she went ahead and she set up each mill as a separate entity so that if there's a common ingredient that all the mills carry, but maybe they have different prices or different nutrients involved, she's able to easily assign feeds to those different mills. And then the nutritionists working with feeds that they're pulling out of those mills can select the correct feed for the formulation on the farm. Now let's look at the users and how we've distributed them through the mill. So we have a number of users in this mill. There's Dove Maloney. She's the owner, and she, as the company admin, is is included in all of the mills. So if you look at her, you can see that she is involved or she's assigned to all the mills, and that just simply allows her to manage those mills. Then let's look at her users. She has Sean O'Shea, who works out of, as a people sorter, the Munster Mill, along with Mary Donovan. We have Emily Surza and Ger Kelly. They both work out of the Leinster Mill, and also Emmy spends some time at the Glendalough Mill because she travels a little bit. We have Seamus Gallagher assigned to the Ulster Mill and Brona McCardle assigned to the Connacht Mill. So those are how we've assigned people by region. And then we have their associated mills. Now, some of these mills are able to serve multiple regions. Um, so that in that way, when people are working out of those people sorting mill assignments, they may also have access to feeds out of some of these multiple feed mills that they draw from. So that's the way that this company is configured. So this is how we've set up these mills to serve both as feed sorters and people sorters. Now returning home, we'll go into Feeds Manager and see what's going on there. So Feeds Manager is the next generation of our feed management software that used to be the role which used to be filled by FBM. It serves as a go-between between our formulation programs and mill software, but also serves the purpose of setting up feed banks that can be issued to all nutritionists so that they easily reconcile and save a lot of time on the part of the nutritionist. They can bring in prices, they can bring in nutrient values, and they can also just have a list of ingredients that are available at various mills. So Feeds Manager serves two purposes. It can communicate with mill software like Brill, Alex, Format, and Hybremen. Several others are involved. It can take a mix formulation, translate it into the right format for those mill software programs to then go ahead and create the mix in their massive mill um, mill ingredient handling systems, then send the mix back through Feeds Manager so that it can then go out on the farm in the formulation that the farmer will be receiving. But for this demonstration, we're just creating feed banks that can then go out on the farm to the nutritionists for their formulation convenience. I'm going to pull over another company that doesn't have any feeds yet in their dashboard. So let me show you that one. So this is what Feeds Manager looks like. Let's open it up. Feeds Manager looks like when you're just working, when you just open it up. The company feeds is the feed library, the list of feeds that are available to nutritionists out there. And this is empty in this case. So we're going to review how to populate the feed library because you want these specific to the the company that you are. So there's when you're trying to populate the feed library, you can import from AMTS Feeds. And that's really, this is a list of all of the feeds in the AMTS library. It contains all of the feed types. You can filter by feed type to look for those. You can search by name. You can search by source ID if you have that memorized. And these are the feeds that you'll find in the AMTS feed library that you can then edit and adapt to meet your company naming conventions, source ID naming conventions, and assign to appropriate mills and also to appropriate feed banks. So to do that, you first select the mill they're going into, and then you can just scroll down through, and I'm just going to send over a feed. You choose the feed by checking in front of it, load the feed and preview. And if that's what you want, you can submit it. And then here we now have a feed in our company feed bank. There, I can change the name to what I want it to say. So this is, let's make this Kent. And the source ID, maybe I have a specific source ID convention that I follow in my business. And so I can change that. It's assigned to the only mill that I have available to me. And then I can go through and I can edit most of these fields. So if I wanted to set a price for it, I would just put that here. And I guess I got to click that to make that stick. Enter it, and then it will auto calculate the other prices. Some fields you have to double click. So if this is purchased, true or false, and you can change that. You can see down here that the action is taking place immediately. You can also edit this in an edit window that looks very similar to the edit window that you're familiar with if you're working in our formulation software. You can just go down through and you can change the values, and you have to hit return, and then you can tab on down and you can enter this. When you finish editing it, you save the changes in order for them to take place. You can duplicate this feed. If you duplicate it, you have to give it either a different name, a different source ID, or assign it to a different mill. Since we only have one mill in this particular example, I would need to give it a different name. So let's say I wanted it to be a bagged product that I can then change the price on. Let's see where my pricing are. We also have these tabs up here that take you quickly to that um, to that particular field, grouping field. So, and you can search for a particular nutrient. If you wanted to put a note in, you can search for that and it takes you to the note section. It doesn't take you directly to that particular column, but it takes you where it would be. Or whatever sort of note you wanted to put in there. At the very end of this list, you will see a feed ID and an AMTS feed ID. The AMTS feed ID tells you what feed the original feed was sourced from. The feed ID is going to be unique. If you want your feeds to reconcile within nutrition or in in nutrition, if you want your feeds to reconcile in nutrition, this feed ID has to match that of the farm and that of the feed bank going out of Feeds Manager. So in order to make sure they're going to match, you come all the way over here back to the security tabs and you make sure that the feed is locked. It has to leave the feed bank locked in order for it to reconcile on the farm. When we say reconcile on a farm, it means that the feed itself is not editable in any other space, but as through the only, sorry, the only editable field on the farm would be pricing. All of the nutrient values are locked and uneditable, but it would come in if it leaves the feed bank with pricing in place, it will overwrite whatever pricing you have on the farm when it reconciles, when you import the feed. Display formula pertains to mixes and as does custom for farm. And we'll cover both of those in a later video. Password is old technology that was used in Pro to sort of protect a formula. We will not have passwords in nutrition, but because Feeds Manager is needing to support both Pro and nutrition feed banks, we have kept that in until Pro is no longer out there in the world being used. Okay, so that's simply bringing in a feed from the AMTS Feeds Feedbank. Now we're going to import from the AMTS software. To do that, I'm going to do it in this more complex system that we set up before. So here we are in Feeds Manager, and I have the Dinty Company feed library, which has quite a few feeds in it already. And now I want to show you how you would import, and this is using the one I'm demonstrating right now is a feed bank that came from our old FBM software, but it's also a similar technique for importing from AMTS Nutrition and AMTS Pro, which will follow in a later, excuse me, in a later video. So I'm going to import, and the particular feed bank that I want to bring in is my organic feed bank. So I'm going to assign it to the Cork mill, which is the mill that I have that carries my organic ingredients. I'm just going to drag and drop this feed bank file to the the upload section. You can click on this and then open a file as well. There's a couple things to note on this page. One of the things is you have to have a mill selected to import the ingredients to. If you want the ingredients to go in more than one mill so that you can do multiple level pricing depending on which mill it's in, on import, you can do that if you're bringing in any ingredients. If you choose another mill to add it to, um, like let's say we're going to add it to the Castlebar mill as well, it would duplicate the feed and it would add one feed to the Cork mill and the same feed with a different GUID to the Castlebar mill. But we're just bringing this into the Cork mill for now. Import feedbank information. Since I'm demonstrating importing a feedbank from our FBM software, the theory is that our users for FBM spend a lot of time creating their feedbanks. Why not make it easy for them to take information from our old program and bring it into our new program and not require that they set up their feedbanks all over again? So in this file, this JSON file that imports into our our AMTS feedbank software is included information about the feed bank. Are the feeds locked? Are the feeds purchased? What mill did the feeds belong to? What company are the feeds from? And how many feeds are in this feed bank? So I want that information to come in. So I'm going to go ahead and say import feed bank information. If you were just importing a bunch of ingredients that you would then distribute to different mills, then perhaps you don't want to import the feed bank information and you would untick that. So once I have all of those clicked, my upload button is active and I click on it. Now I can scroll down and I can see all the feeds that are being brought in. And if I wanted to bring in all of them, all I need to do is click here in the box above the name, and then it checks all of these for import. And so I'm going to go ahead and load feeds in preview. And now it tells me that all these are an update because I brought them in earlier just to test them. But this normally on a new import would be just a new importation of the same of a feed, and it would be assigning it a name, a source ID, and the mill that you want it to go to. This particular checkbox here, this is important when you're creating a feed bank that has mixes in it. And perhaps this is only the mixes that you only want the mixes to show. If you have ingredients outside of the mix, then that would be fine for them to show individually, but maybe you don't want your mix ingredients to show in that feed bank. So an easy way, again, we tried to make it convenient, an easy way to exclude a separate list in the feed bank of the mix ingredients is to check this box. That way, only the mix will show and it will not give a separate line item to each ingredient in the mix. They will still come into the company feed library, but they won't be shown in the feed bank that you're going to send out to your users. This is especially critical to companies who want to hide their formulation contents. So they're happy sending out a mix in their feed bank, but they're hiding the formula. So they don't really even want you to see what feeds are in the mix itself. So this gives a level of security. So you don't say, oh, I see that this feed, and this feed is in this feed bank. They must be in the mix. So now I'm going to confirm my addition. And they will have been added to my company feeds. There will also be a feed bank created when I do that. So now I can see that I have this feed bank called Dinty Organic Ingredients. So I need to do a few checks on this feed bank. You'll notice that all the rest of these feed banks have an update date and a last published date. It also shows me some information that you can see out here. They're not company specific. It does export showing feed pricing, and the total ingredient count is 6 on this particular one. This feed bank has 24 feeds, and I have not yet published it. So I'm going to edit it. And I can look down through here, see my feeds that are in it. Yep, that looks good. I'm also checking when I'm getting ready to send out a feed bank whether it's locked or not, because I want these feeds to go out locked because I want them to be only editable for price. If I wanted to send out a feed bank that was intending to be just a bunch of what we call template feeds that just make it so that it's easy for the nutritionist to pull, for example, let's finish this up and then we'll go back and look at one of those template feeds. Um, so we also have these mixes that are locked for editing. And in this case, I'm allowing the nutritionist to see what's in that formula. So we're going to edit the characteristics of this feedback. Right now, it's not company specific. I'm happy with that. But I do want to have it associated with the mills that my users are assigned to. So just as I have my feed mills, which is where the feeds reside, I also have my user mills. And I want my users who are affiliated with the Ulster mill to have access to this feed bank, the Connacht um, the Koenig mill, I want them to have access. The Leinster mill and the Leinster mill and the Munster mill. So all of my nutritionists can have access to this feed bank when I publish it. So I'm going to go ahead and save it. And this is an important step. You have to make sure that it is associated with a mill that your nutritionists have access to. So if you have a single mill, then you really only have to associate it with that one mill. But if you have multiple mills and multiple nutritionists working out of certain nutrition um, regional sorting type mills, then you want to make sure that your feed banks, regardless of what mill is listed for the mill ID, are associated with these other mills. So we'll save this. And now that it's been saved and I've set it all up, I'm going to publish it. Publishing pushes it to the cloud so that anybody who is working with the anybody who has a nutrition license that is working with this company and has access to the feed bank can then have access to that feed bank seamlessly without having to move things around through emails, through um, websites where you upload them and they download them. If you are supporting this, any pro licenses with this same feed bank, you would need to export it. So you just click on the export. It chooses this because that was the feed bank I have open, and you can say download file, and it will download the correct file type for nutrition. So right there is a JSON file that will be created, and then we'll put that JSON file in the pro feedback folder under your documents. Then when you open your pro folder, that JSON file will get converted into the proper feedback type for pro use. You do not have to do that step if you're working in nutrition, because through the publishing and then managing feedback access, it will give you automatic access to that feedback through an API call. So now we're going to go over and make sure that everybody that should has access to that feedback. And for that, I have to choose my people associated mill. So I'm just going to choose the top one here. I've got my Munster mill, and these are all the people in my company. And I can go down through and I'm going to add, I want everybody to have access to my Dinty organic ingredients. So I'm just going to click here in front of it and it automatically assigns it. One of the people in this list is an external user. I had added Lynn in as an external user, and I've decided I want to give her access to the feed bank. How did I add her as an external user? I came up here and I just said, I want Lynn, and gee, I might as well make myself have access to this. So I wanted to give myself access until this date. I click submit, and then it adds me to the list of people that have access potentially. I just have to check the feed bank, and there we go. You can take away access to a specific a specific mill or specific feed bank just by unchecking in front of it, or you can limit the amount of time that people have access to that mill. So let's say I wanted this to be um, just for a few days. I can go ahead and I can change the amount of time that anybody has access to the mill. In this case, I'm changing Lynn's access. So now when I have published this and I've pushed it to the cloud and I've given access to my people, I can go ahead and open nutrition. Okay, so now we're going to come back and we're going to see how that looks in nutrition when you've shared a feed bank through the API. So I'm going to open nutrition. So it's important to note that in order to have access to the feed bank, you and it's just published, you have to have it closed because the license is checking what farms you have access to, what feeds you have access to, what feed banks you have access to. So when I open it, and this time I'm opening it as a member of Dinty Nutrition. Here I am, Emmys at Dinty Nutrition, and I'm going to open Kelly Dairy. And so I'm going to go ahead and go to my feeds. And right now I have no feed banks. I just have the AMTS feed banks, but I want to pull it from my company feed banks. So to find my company feed banks, because I haven't downloaded any, I will go to my feed banks. And I have this little download feed bank icon. That means I have some feed banks available to me that I can download. I have quite a few. I'm going to download the organic ingredient one. After the initial download, you don't have to download it again. So now in my feeds folder, if I import, I have Dinty organic ingredients. I have some mixes. I have some all sorts of ingredients that I can bring in. I have some additives, and I can go ahead and bring them on the farm. And if they had pricing information, it would be brought in. But otherwise, if I go to mixes, I can now see my, I should be able to see my organic pellet. It tells me that it's locked, so I can't edit it, but I can look at it and I can see what the values are. So then that is the way that you manage a feed bank and creating a feed bank in Feeds Manager, and that is some of the security benefits of working with Feedbank Manager. So actually, I can come through here. I'm going to close my program, and I'm going to come back to my feed bank, and I'm going to make one of my organic feed banks with, let's see, so what is this? I want one of my mixes, and I'm going to make it so that I can't see the formula on that. So let's go with this one. I'm going to change the display formula to false. And I'm coming back. So I've made a change to a feed that's in a feed bank. It gets saved automatically to the feed bank, but I need to publish the feed bank again. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to publish it. And I don't need to change my access. That's only something I have to set up the first time. Now I'm opening nutrition again. And in this case, I already have the feed bank on in downloaded to my program. So I don't have to download it again. But if I bring in a feed, so let me open Kelly Dairy. And I'm going to my feeds and I want to import the the mix that I made. So now the blue tells me it's already on my farm. And I believe it was a 20% that I made. So it had a hidden formula. So now we'll go to mixes. And it tells me that the display formula is not checked. So I won't be able to see it. So if I select it, it won't show me any of the ingredients in that mix. So this is an excellent way for you to protect your mixes so that nobody with your feedback can see that what that is. Okay, so that is a basic use of Feeds Manager. I'll have some subsequent recordings that will show more, but this will get you started. As always, feel free to call for answers. There will be much more detailed and more specific um, videos. These are some rough videos that we wanted to put together so that you would be able to understand the essential uses of Feeds Manager. There's so much more about it that I will get to, but that gave you a little bit of the flow with Feeds Manager.